story that must be told. Here's a little story that must be told. Here's a little story. Here's a little story.
Want me to look this way? This
Yes,
way?
you can look at me.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, perfect.
What is your name?
Sheila Locke, born and raised right here, Seattle, Beacon Hill. I went to UW for just 1 quarter, transferred out to Bellevue, BCC. Then I discovered they had a broadcast school out there with a radio station. And I went, oh, now there's something I can get interested in. So I got signed up for that and got into the broadcast program. I got involved with the station there and thought, now this is pretty fun. The production was really fun, learning how to splice tape, physically splice tape, cut and make tape together. It was more of a traditional jazz station at the time. And I remember when I got my shift the next day, Mr. Funkhauser was like, and Mr. Wilkie were like, okay, we need you to just tone it down a little. Because, I grew up listening to KJR and KYAC. I was like, okay, AM radio and all that. It's like, okay, you have to be all hyped up. So I just said, tell you what, just act very bored. And then just make the basic announcements or call a sign, and what song was just played. And you're listening to KBCS 90.3, da-da-da-da-da, right? And then segue, go. I was like, very bored. Yes, bored. Okay, so I had to be very bored, and then it got boring. And then by spring quarter, I'd taken 2 classes, and they said, what are you guys doing this summer? Internship. You guys all need to go out and get an internship. And so I believe I called a couple times, and I got a hold of Robert L. Scott. And Robert L. is, he is the name for Seattle radio. He's one of the godfathers of Seattle radio. And he says, sure, come on down. I went down. I'm like, this is a radio station, because it was a dump. The board, I think I remember the first thing I saw when I saw the board when I walked in, it was during Robert L.'s afternoon shift. And I saw the board, and I thought, oh, my God, our board at KBCS is better than that one. That's exactly what I thought, because it was a very old board with the old dial pots on there and everything, and still had the, and everything back then had meters that were popping like this. So, had 2 turntables there, and 2 turntables, a couple of phones on the back, and a big clock. There was no digital clock back then, but it was functional. And then there was this big wall of records, all the vinyl. This was the library. And there was no organization, because you could just look up there. You could just look at these rows of 12-inch records, albums, and vinyl all in there. And they were so worn out that all the spines literally were all frayed. So many of them. So I'm pulling them out like this. So I'm just waiting around. I'm like, God dang, what a mess. I was like, how do you find anything in here? So he offered me an internship. He goes, well, we don't really have a program, but if you want to come down, a few days a week, come on down. Well, there's something you can learn here. So that was that. Next day I came in there, and Robert goes, hey, tell you what, you want to organize that library there? And I looked at that, like, yeah, he got some duct tape or something. So that's what I did. And so that was my first foot into radio. I was in the control room with Robert L. He says, you want to come hang out? So I hung out, got to watch, and he was just lightning quick. He pops the traffic, he does the thing, plays the songs. So it's just a one-person show, right? During a commercial break, he turns around, and he just turns around and he goes, what do you think? I go, hey, man, this is cool. Way better than KBCS, right? He goes, yep. He goes, you think you can do this? I go, that? I said, yes. Not very confidently. I just said, yeah, I could do that. He goes, tell you what, why don't you come in here tomorrow night, come in here, hang out with Cal, which was the evening shift, and then we could probably give you a shot and take over the overnight show. I was like, what time does that go? Oh, midnight to 5:30. I'm like, oh. So I guess I had a gig. I was the first one to play Rapper's Delight on commercial radio in Seattle, thanks to my shift on KYAC. This white sleeve, orange label, orange, red, whatever, and all it said was Sugar Hill Records, Rapper's Delight. And that was it. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And there was a little sticky note on it from Robbin. It says, play only after midnight. So I played it. I didn't audition it. I just stuck the needle down and just said, okay, the boss said we got a new song and I get to play it now. Here we go. So I just played it. And the phones went bonkers. I mean, the request line was just, and all the way from 3 a.m., 4 a.m., the light never stopped flashing, And every time I pick it up, what is that? What is that? What is that? You play it again? And I swear I played it once an hour, for 5 hours, Sugar Hill Gang. So that was my real introduction to, any hip-hop back then. And then by that point, I got a job at Como. I went to work at Radio News. Como had an opening for a newsroom assistant. So my first day of work at Como, President Reagan got shot. I learned what professional news people do. It's rip and read, the old rip and read, which is, you get something off the wire, you rip it, take it in, and you read it. Rip and read, no edits, you just read it. You go, AP reports, da, 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 da. Working in network-affiliated radio news with some of these, radio legends at the time, Larry Nelson, Byron Johnson, who did radio and TV, Bruce King, TV sports, and Bob Rondo. I'm like, oh my God, the voice of the Huskies. Holy cow, this is big time, right? I did that for a couple of years, and then that's when I thought, I got to get back to my DJing. I was still trying to find some traction. So I chased down and I ordered my first pair of 1200s. And back then, you used to ship something UPS, COD, cash on delivery, which means when they knock on the door, you got to pay them right there at the door, which is the weirdest thing because you can't imagine that now. So yeah, turntable showed up. And I'm like, okay, here you go. And I whipped out the cash. I had saved up all this money. COD. So that was that. I discovered they were opening a new teen club in Federal Way called The Spectrum. And I walked in there with my few records, and I said, hey, you guys need a DJ? I'm a DJ. And they went, prove it. And they pointed to the booth. I'm like, oh, God, okay. I had never been in a DJ booth in a club before. And so I got into the booth, and I said, okay, well, I just see it's a different kind of a board, but I think I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it like I'm on the radio station. I'm just going to segue, nice tight cues, and boom, boom, boom. That's it. And I did it, and they went, hey, yeah, you're okay. So they offered me one of the rotating spots to be one of the first DJs at the Spectrum. Back then, the music was KYAC, the rock of the 80s, which is specifically new wave, and then C89, which has always been dance, music, and even to that day. So C89 had a really, targeted audience, so they put on a big dance, city dance, exhibition hall. They had almost 4,000 kids or something. George Kano and Greg Jones, they were like advisors to the student advisors up there at Seattle Central. They wanted to do something for their student body as an event fundraiser, but get everybody involved, that kind of thing. And they says, we heard you can produce the show. I'm like, yeah, who told you that? I can do it. But Ness was a friend of George Kano, and George Kano then was the one that called me. And I says, sure, what do you want to do? He goes, we want to do a thing like C89 did. But, it's funded by the students here, so everything is... I'm like, okay, cool. We'll do it. I can do it. That was the first dance ever. Ness was the DJ. At that time, Ness was just getting off the ground at KFOX. And it turned out to be pretty good. So 3,000 kids at the exhibition hall with only five police officers. Nothing happened back then. I think we charged $7 maybe. I thought for the rest of the summer, maybe I could find a couple places, rec center, that type of stuff. Small little things, and keep the kids engaged. So I was driving around Rainier Playfield, I went down, checking all these different places out. I went to the boys club down in on Rainier, and then I ended up in the boys club up in the CD over on Spruce there. And I walk in there going, hey, yeah, the boys club, this can work. And they had a big gym, and they had this sign right there on the door. I'm like, Seattle's best DJ, Sir Mix-a-Lot, Friday night, da-da-da-da, which was tomorrow, right? I'm like, what the heck is a Sir Mix-a-Lot? Now, all through this, Ness and I had had a relationship going. He was on the radio, and I was he was doing gigs. I was booking gigs for him and all this kind of stuff. So Ness was doing a gig down in Kent. I'm like, okay, I get it. If you want me to come, I'll come with you to Kent, but you're coming with me to the boys' club afterwards. He goes, why are we going there? I go, because somebody named Sir Mix-a-Lot is claiming to be the best DJ, and if I'm promoting you, we need to go find out what's going on. So we went, and it was dark, and there was music playing. Then the next thing I know, I hear Ness, the name, I'm like, I think you're getting dissed, Ness. So it's like, let's go see what's up. So we went up there and we introduced ourselves, and Ness was like straight up like, hey, I can play some of your stuff on my radio show. So then that was an instant connection for them. And then it was an instant connection because I told him, I says, hey, I can promote you on some shows. And so he's like, yeah, okay. So we made that connection. So that was the moment when the three of us met for the first time, through learning what Mix was doing and then hearing the results of Ness playing his music on the radio. My mind started going, wow, we can do another exhibition hall thing with you and you. Through that process over the next weeks, all I kept hearing from Mix was, hey, do you know how to get my stuff on wax? Because I got to get my stuff. I want to make a record. I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. So I called a few friends, and in Seattle back then, I didn't have any mentors, anything, but there was only one that would be the closest to a mentor, which would be Deem Sudokawa. I know he had pressed his own records and everything, so he ran me through the ropes. He gave me all this stuff. He showed me who to call and all that kind of thing. So that's how I learned. I didn't know there was such a process. You got to make the acetate, you got to make the stamper, and you got to do this, and you got to get it mastered. I'm like, okay. So I called Mix. I was like, okay, I got it figured out. Let's work on getting a record put together. But in the meantime, we have a show we'll put together. Then I had a partner who said, okay, well, I'll put up the money and we can do another big show. And that partner was Greg Jones. He goes, yeah, I can pump in a few $100 a month to cover for whatever expenses. I'm like, okay, that might work. Somehow we came up together with enough money to put on another exhibition hall dance, not through the school. And that dance was the first time I put Ness and Mix together on stage. And it just turned out really good because Mix would do his thing, 15, 20, 30 minutes, and then take a break. And Ness would spin, and everybody had it was just a big old party. But that's what propelled the rest of the money to actually say, okay, now we can afford to pay this $1,000 to get this record pressed up and that kind of thing. The first single we put out was I Just Love My Beat. And then I found out about this square dance. Like, what the heck is that? I'm like, that's a cut, whatever it is. We found a way to put out that first record and did another exhibition hall thing. Tried to sell records at the exhibition hall thing. Nobody bought any. This was the first Nastymix record, yeah. So the first record, I did the required minimum, 500 pressing. You have to press 500. So I pressed up the 500 from Macola Records. There was no plan except for, let's get these records on wax and figure out how to promote it. Yeah, so we had 500 records. I swear it probably took 6 months to sell 100 of them, if that's what it felt like, because nobody in Seattle wanted them except for Music Menu and Glenn. And, even then it was still on consignment. And it's like, okay, Glenn, come on, help me out here. No, we could do the 10, and it went like that. He goes, hey, that's pretty good. Give me 20. And then the word spread from Glenn, because he had the same owner owned Penny Lane down there in Lakewood. They hit it, and since they service a lot of the military purchasers who are on base there, it started popping at Penny Lane. So we only had those two. But between those two, eventually it forced Tower on 5th and Mercer to let me bring 10 in on consignment. Right? So that was the first record. And then at that point, I said, I have to use what I know. I know radio. So I know how to get a hold of these radio stations. So let me see if I can call Robert L. to send me a list of radio stations. So we got the list. I was like, okay, now we got, here are the stations. Let me kind of figure out who I think we can afford to send a record to. If I learned anything, it was like, well, these guys in L.A. and New York, they're not going to play our stuff. So let's go to the small let's work small. With a limited budget, it's like, okay, I could afford this. We'll send 50 records out, some stations. Some of them I didn't know. I just closed my eyes and picked a part of town. Or I just thought, okay, if they're close to a military base, I'll send it to there, somewhere that's close. So that's how I ended up sending records like to Sumter, South Carolina, Killeen, Texas, and all these different places that I had no idea where they were. Eventually, over time, you get a phone call, either a radio station or a record store in the market. And the record store say, hey, so-and-so's they're blasting your record. I don't know, how do I get this record? Record Planet, little store. I think they had a couple stores. They called me up, Record Planet. I go, where are you from? Flint, Michigan. Say, yeah, they said that they heard this on the radio. I'm thinking, oh, what station? I was like, yeah, can you get me 10 of those right now? I thought, I can get you 10. Yeah. And back then, still COD. You pay cash. You pay COD. So yeah, I met somebody at that time who worked for DHL, and he goes, hey, yeah, don't worry. If you ever need anything, give me a shout. So I called him up. I said, can you get something to Flint, Michigan? Oh, he goes, I'll get it there tomorrow. I'm like, for real? Tomorrow? Just go up there, call me, and I'll come out. But make sure you come after 10 o'clock. And so I had to box it all up, took it out there. He goes, I got you. I get a call the next morning from them, from the Record Planet. Yeah, and they says, how'd you get that record here so fast? I says, yeah, see, you're dealing with Nastymix, that's why. And so slowly, the record label, they was like, oh my God, we're down to the last box. I guess we better make some more records. Snap. So we had to make some more records. So that whole process of selling the first 400 or so, it just seemed like, God, that took so long. And it was only vinyl. The first 100,000 pieces of anything we sold was just 12-inch vinyl, nothing else. If anybody could sell 100,000 vinyl today, they'd be like, you must know something. The second release was the I'm a Trip with the Square Dance remix. And that's the one that really got the wheels going. Then the bigger fish started calling, This is so-and-so from so-and-so distribution. Yeah, well, who are you? Where do you service? Okay, I'm down here in Shreveport. Oh, we're outside of Dallas, Norcross, Georgia. I'm down there in Florida. Oh, there's you guys in Ohio. Oh, you're in Chicago. I'll send you some, and then you get some, and you guys in Maryland get some. Forming the record label at that point, finding other people to bring on board to actually help do the day-to-day stuff as the demand became legit. Eventually, my partner Greg ran out of money, and she said, "Hey, I can't cover these bills anymore." That was in the early chapters, and then as we start to grow, I bring in Ramon to run club promotions. Eventually, Ness gets let go at KFOX. I'm like, "Hey, you need a job? I need a radio guy, so you can do the radio." And Glenn eventually came on board a little bit later, and same with Michael to focus on retail and that kind of stuff. The product then was now CDs and cassettes. So, never did a cassette before. I guess I knew I would eventually do a CD. So when you have CDs and cassettes, you have the opportunity to move into like the Music Land, the bigger retailers. A distributor would call up that I didn't know about, and they say, "Yeah, this is Schwartz Brothers. We're here in Maryland. Da 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 da. I got a Target on the hook. They want 10,000 pieces." I'm like, "Oh, do you want me to ship you 10,000 so you could fill the order to Target?" Because obviously Target's not going to buy direct from me. Yeah, it was primarily Target and Kmart back then. They were the big mass merchandisers. If they came on board, you either say, well, you have to say no and risk never getting anything in ever, or you say, yes. And I'm like, yeah, but who's paying for the 10,000 cassettes? So the distributor's like, well, we can help you out a little bit, whatever the case is. And so you kind of had to hope and pray that, okay, then I have to call up and make this humongous order. I said, I need 10,000 cassettes. Once the album got to organically 100,000 on our own, we did 100,000 albums. And that's when all of a sudden all these other calls started coming in. And I think in less than 9 or 10 months, we went from 100,000 to 500,000, just like that. It was because of the Schwartz Brothers, the big mass distributors coming on board. They were getting the calls every week from the retailers. So yeah, all of a sudden I would get even City Hall. City Hall would start coming in for 10,000 pieces almost every other week or something like that. I mean, we go from 100,000 to $500,000, and then from $500,000 to $1 million, and the second album literally goes gold within less than a year on top of that. And it's like, oh, geez, let's see, you take all the singles and everything, all that up. I think it was like in 4 years we sold, 4 million pieces? Back when Nastymix was rolling on all cylinders, our phone bill was $4,000 a month, with 12 lines or 10 lines, whatever lines we had. And we get these phone bills that would be like that thick. I didn't go to England when they played the Wembley Arena. This was really early on. I licensed Square Dance Rap to a label in UK, independent label UK. Morgan Khan was the guy's name. I'll never forget this. And then, within weeks or months after that, he says, I'm putting on the first Fresh Fest version here in the UK. We want Mix-a-Lot to come and be part of the show. And I was like, whoa. So Mix, Egyptian Lover, Wrecking Crew, all the LA guys. So I sent Ness, Mix, I think Maharaji, Kid Sensation, and then I had to have a road manager, which was my friend Tony. So they all got to go. And I just remember I had to give him the little WorldCom card. It says, this is the card you use, the code when you make a long distance call back. Okay, so call me back. So anyway, they called me one time from London. Yeah, we just finished sound check and all that. Ness almost killed himself. What? Oh, excuse me? Well, yeah. Well, you have to ask him, but he was trying to pretend, you know how Prince did that thing on stage and he jumps on the curtain and he comes flying down like that. Well, Ness was up on the speaker and he jumped on the curtain. He couldn't hold on. He hit the deck. I'm like, oh, is he okay? Yeah, he's okay, but he's real embarrassed because he did in front of, during the sound check and all that kind of thing. So we got hit with the recession, and that's when retailer was having their issues with cash and interest rates and everything else. I didn't understand it then, but that's impacted the distribution chain. Those businesses can't, pay their bills. Everybody that's below the food chain, you're not going to get paid either. And if you get paid with unsold product. And so that was really tough. And you get a lawsuit from, your big artist. You get a bankruptcy filing from Schwartz Brothers. I'm like, oh, that's not good. We have $200,000 in receivables. They just filed bankruptcy on us. Okay, we got a lot of holes in the ship that can't be plugged up anymore. Like the leaks were coming everywhere. That's what took Nastymix down. Good old days. I don't miss lugging the vinyl to a gig, but I do miss playing and manipulating vinyl. So many years later, I just come back to say, well, hey, look at that. I'm doing weddings again, and I love it, right?